On the first case on this Martinez tank, they talk about like how we don't have like this power necessity which creates a centralized view around art, music, and spoken word, but that's exactly what poetics of resistance. It talks about like how we use art, music, and poetry in order to have like this political interruption. So like this case turn was like real bullshit. They wanted a quick way out to say that I don't actually solve for anything. Then their Jerome's arguments talking about like how the UDLs are critical for thriving and thinking. I mean, I'm using the UDLs. I've debated this for the past time, so actually I'm using the UDL same as you are. So I don't understand how you access this as a case turn. Because if anything, I use the UDL better than you do because I told you you're not taking hip hop a step further. You're not educating people who actually don't understand. You're not influencing. Like telling me like how this culture is actually intertwined within hip hop. And then they talk about like how we don't get access to the 3-tier process. Well, in the end of the day, when Kyrie reads his poems, he talks about like how the customs of Trinidad has reflected him to like have this vision of what his mom is and like how people see his mom as Miss Lawyer and like how they misuse her and like how they would beat her just simply because she was like a woman in Trinidad. I think that's personal enough. Like it was personal, it was his mom. Case turn, the concept of knowledge that they create must be reevaluated because currently only men define what knowledge is. Jarvis 2000. In the end, they determine what actually counts as knowledge and edible, the knowledge that reflect the interest and the needs of the dominant or ruling group. The vast majority of knowledge, because its manliness represents the mainstream but not mainstream knowledge, which is in the eyes of the confront women, are out of the cold face. Feminism protects its challenge by giving the ontological primacy for the woman at the theoretical and practical level to fill with the knowledge that people quote women about the consequence of being socially excluded from the central power. Next, gender shapes all our social experiences. Like if they don't break down gender within the debate ground, they lose access to their their Brinkley 08 evidence because in order to get access for the social experience, they must break down what gender is as a whole. Peterson 93. The categories and ordering framework shapes the lens through which we look at what they think about ways that make sense of the world around us by filtering our ways of thinking and what the ordering experience, the categories, and the images we rely on shape on behalf that thus made with the world we live in. They contemplate consequences, the difficulty sometimes on peasants to reflect the critical to assumptions to their accuracy of desirability to explore the implications of adopting a different lens. Next. Patriarchy affects all interactions in knowledge. Nagel and Dockle 1999. This turns their whole 180. This says their point of departure for the feminist critique for the reason that the concept of reason in everyday sense has connotation of masculinity, ascribes reason to the men and emotion to women. Sorry, stop moving the table. Objective and general for the orientation, general principle are seen as the masculine character traits, while subjectivity, spontaneity, and orientation to the concrete, and in particular are seen as the typical feminine character traits of like this part is basically saying that like the knowledge that they have is currently patriarchal. Like if we don't break down patriarchy first, their knowledge that they continue to re-entrench within the UDL will always be the same and women will always be denied. Next. Debate is key. You must understand how and when gender structures construction in order to deconstruct it. Rise and over. This is also a K term because they don't understand like how debate in itself is gendered. They don't break down this like gender space. They don't solve for anything. The continent basic is one of the mechanisms by which inequality is recreated in everyday life. They are documented mechanisms for decreasing the size of such rights affected those to the subordinate group by highlighting their legitimate experiences beyond the others in the intermediate social settings. We need to understand when and how equality is constructed to reproduce into destructive, onto poetic resistance. Poetry allows for the issues like race and class and gender to be freely questioned and affirmed in their spaces. Stovall 06. The concept of which I know to the educators is important because it's grounded research challenge shows we go beyond the space of objective research, therefore shows that they are often complex and challenging. Poetry allows for issues of race, class, and gender and sexuality to be freely questioned and affirmed next. Poetry is a process of dropping hard questions into the world so we can answer them in the case that poets should begin to question him or her as it cannot connect to the real world. Stovall 06. Poetry becomes a process of dropping hard questions into the world and trying to answer them for the performer, the challenge to ask hard questions of the audience through the performance. Instead of thinking as poetry as some task to be tolerated, she encourages students to take it as a statement. Let's demystify the idea that poetry should be used as a present and the artist should begin to question him or herself on how they connect to the larger world. I mean, they tell how they connect to the larger world, but they don't actually talk about like how their rap will actually change anything. They just said we're going to use it in the debate space to make it a common space. That's fine, but like once the debate space is common, like what do we do? Like make them give you the image like what would this debate space look at after everything is common? Like what's the point? Like what will we do after that? Next. And in order to break down the oppressive system, we must collectively confront sex, race, and class. Hooks 89. Working collectively to confront the difference, to expand our awareness of sex, race, and class, our intellect system of domination, the ways we enforce to perpetuate these structures in the context which are leading to the meaning of solidarity. In this work, we must reform the foundation of the feminist movement. Without it, we cannot effectively resist patriarchal domination. Without it, we remain engaged and alienated from one another. For the fear of painful confrontation often leads to women and men active in the political movement to avoid rigorous critical encounters. If we cannot hope to change the world, the true politicization comes to critical consciousness and trying to the process. One of the demands we give with set ways of thinking and being, we shift our paradigm. We open ourselves to the unknown and the unfamiliar, undergoing the dignity and the integrity that comes with the revolutionary change. If we do not change our consciousness, we cannot change our action or demand change from others. So like we need to make people understand that, you know, feminism is an issue that's not going away. Like we don't want these band-aid solutions to say, yeah, I do intersectional approaches, so now all the women get voices. It doesn't work like that. Now it actually has to be a step forward to actually do something. Like don't let him come to say we do intersection, like that's fine. Make him prove to you how he solved for me in the real world. I'm gonna sound